Hey, girlfriend, you know who you are. You have big, big dreams. You want to write a book, stand on a TED Talk stage, be a life coach offering wisdom from your RV in Montana, a cafe in Barcelona, or a beach chair in Tulum. Your other girlfriends and your family, they don't always get your biz savvy. Why do you want to leave your JOB? Because you're a C.A.T.S, aka coach, author, thought leader, and speaker. Meet other change makers like yourself and find out how they make it happen. This is the Big Meow podcast.
Hi, Cats. It's Kristen, and I'm here with Neha Mandhani. Hi, Neha. How are you?
Hi, Kristen. I'm good. Thank you so much for having me here.
So I love your work around leadership, specifically self-leadership. What does self-leadership mean?
Thank you for diving straight in there. I think of self-leadership around three different dimensions, right? One, when I think of self-leadership, it's really your relationship with yourself. The second dimension, I think of it sort of building off the first one, is really understanding, deepening your self-awareness, understanding what are your triggers, what are your dreams, what are your aspirations, what are your values, what are your strengths, and really what's going on inside of you. And then the third dimension, which sort of touches on really how do we take that self-knowledge and really apply that in the world, in terms of how we manage other people, how we show up with other people, really how we interact with anyone and everyone around us. So really, to me, change in the world, how we show up in the world really starts with the self. And I don't think we're having enough of a dialogue on what that really means. We put it in the personal growth category, and I think that's one dimension, but there is so much more, especially in the context of leadership, on how are we leading ourselves, how are we showing up for ourselves and with ourselves, because that really directly impacts how we lead other people.
Yeah, I love what you just said about that, Neha. I really believe this is especially true for myself, for women. I just feel like I talk to a lot of women, through cats and things like that. And do we really take the moment and pause and look within and get clear about what do we like? What do we not like? What are our gifts? What are our talents? What have we learned? Where are we now? I think that sometimes we're so busy, our lives are so full that we don't take the time. We're so focused on that external, or we're very task oriented and not necessarily inner strength or inner wisdom or inspiration focused. I mean, how can we make that shift towards what you're talking about?
Yeah, I love that question. The first thing I want to tell people, this happens pretty much every day in at least one coaching session, if not more, where there is this belief that in order to make the shift, I'm going to read that one book, I'm going to go work with one coach, I'm going to meditate and I'm going to do yoga and it's just going to automatically happen. And I think all of those things and more, right? Whatever is the right tool intervention for you absolutely supports our learning and understanding of ourselves. But there is no quick fix, right? There is no overnight, oh, I just do this one thing once and it's done. So I think as a principle, I really want people to feel like there's nothing wrong with them if they feel like, gosh, I want to get started. I want to do more of this, but how am I going to do it? It's really, to me, I think of this as a work of a lifetime, right? And there is no end state. I don't think I can come in and say, oh, Kristen, my work is done because I advocate for this, I teach this, I support other people. So that's sort of one grounding principle. This is work of a lifetime. It takes practice, daily practice, right? So that's one thing. I think then sort of double clicking, okay, tactically, what can this mean for you? I would say give yourself permission to experiment. It might be journaling for you. It might be 15 minutes of reading every day just sparks ideas for you and gets you to think. I tell people, sometimes it might mean taking a structured class. But again, the point isn't you take a 4-week class or a 4-month class or a program and then like your work is done. But really that can deepen your understanding, can deepen your learning. So my invitation for people is there's nothing I'm going to say here that's like groundbreaking people haven't heard, but really go experiment, go learn for yourself. It might be therapy. It might be a group program. It might be one-on-one. Yesterday I was telling a client, and she was thinking of, she's just going to start a group with 4 of her closest friends. It, checks the box of connection and friendship, but each week they will each bring a topic, and they're just going to explore that, right? So I think it's less about what format, what modality, but to me, I think again, the principle is doing the work, right? Taking the time, pausing. Another thing I tell my clients is, especially once our coaching sessions end, is schedule that one-on-one with yourself, right? You have this one-on-one time with me, whatever cadence it was. Schedule a weekly Friday check-in with yourself. Again, back to your point, like we have one-on-ones with other people, right? In the workplace. Where is that one-on-one with yourself? And again, it could be something during your workday. It could be 10 minutes before bed every night. But really taking the time to get to know yourself, right? Deepening that relationship with yourself is really, my invitation for anyone listening.
I love what you said about, we come in and we're like, if only I could go to yoga class, if only I could read this book, if only I could take that course. I mean, that's really like just being that hamster on the wheel. And it's like that thing is right in front of you. And I'm guilty of that too. I'm like, oh, I need to go learn this. Not as bad as I used to be a long time ago, but I am definitely a student of life and I want to learn all these different things. But I think that there is a lot to be said for being in the present moment. You already have everything you need. You know everything you need to know. Everything is available to you. And this to really claim it, bring it in and anchor it. Because I think that is the key, is that when we can actually anchor in and claim, our truth, whatever that divine wisdom that we each have that's unique to us, I do think that's when the magic starts to happen. Because otherwise we feel, especially in the world of like social media, there's that shiny stuff all over the place. And we're like, oh, I need to do this or sign up for this or take this. And, I think that it can really crowd out your ability and your capacity to listen to your own intuitive guidance about what's next for you.
Yeah. And Kristen, I want to double click on something else you said, right? Which is, in some ways it's a paradox, right? On one hand, I'm telling you it's about your relationship with yourself, and I'm still saying, okay, maybe go take a yoga class, or maybe it's a book, or maybe it's a group of 4 women coming together. And I think the distinction I want to make here is really starting with deepening that connection, that self-belief, that faith, that trust in yourself. And sometimes, when the more you get to know yourself, the more you can connect with that inner knowing, you will realize, oh, actually, I'm just making this up, right? I actually want to transition into finance, and I know nothing about finance. Okay, great. The first step is, let me go talk to 3 women I know who work in finance.
Right.
That is a very different way of looking outward versus, oh, I know nothing. I'm not good at this. I am broken. Kristen has it all figured out. Let me pick up the phone and talk to Kristen. So I don't think my point is not to look outward.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely.
From a place of internal enoughness and self-belief and curiosity, right? Like, I'm talking to Kristen because I want to learn from her, not because something is wrong with me or broken with me. So same thing with taking a yoga class. It's, oh, if you go in with this narrative of, oh, I can't stretch, my body is, not flexible, I don't know how to touch my toes, versus I love myself, I want to take care of my body, and I'm going to that yoga class to honor my body. So you could still be looking externally, but really coming back to that place of groundedness that exists inside each of us.
You are listening to the Big Meow podcast, empowering women entrepreneurs to share their voices, make an impact, and transform the world in a positive way. Sponsored by Orange Cat Content Marketing Agency.
What I'm hearing you say is that this is a lot about the language and the inner dialogue we have with ourselves. It's like, what do we believe to be true about who we are? How do we speak to ourselves? I mean, I feel like a lot of women have an inner dialogue that just isn't supportive. It doesn't inspire us. It doesn't actually give us permission or allow us to really become our highest potential. How can we really strengthen our inner dialogue, or even just have an awareness, give it a tune up, right?
Yeah. The first thing I'm going to recommend to people is, the simplest thing is just to pay attention to that dialogue, I think so many times it can be childhood conditioning. It can be the way a teacher would talk to you becomes your internal dialogue, maybe a partner, a toxic, a difficult boss. So I think even just noticing, oh yeah, I just told myself that I am overweight. I just told myself I'm not a good manager. I just told myself I'm not a good mother. And recognizing that, I think that's a beautiful quote. I don't know who said this, but it's like a problem well stated is half solved. Like just even having that awareness, right?
Hmm.
Oh, I said this thing to myself. And then, as soon as you notice that, just take a moment and pause. And instead of again beating yourself up, oh, see, I don't know how to talk kindly to myself. Just really, I would encourage you, if this is available, put your hands on your heart, or if it's available, if you're in the middle of a meeting and you notice that, just take a deep breath, come back to yourself and make a different choice, right? It's like, okay, I'm not overweight. I'm not a bad manager. I'm a good manager who was micromanaging my direct report in this one moment. I am not a micromanager. I am a good manager. I was micromanaging in that one moment, right? So just recognizing and making a different choice with ourselves. And then another favorite tool, which I will give credit to Kristen Neff, who talks a lot about self-compassion. So if you're not familiar with her work, highly recommend her work. And, one of the things she says is, think of how would you talk to your friends? If a friend came to you and told you that, I'm a bad manager. I micromanage my people all the time. Nobody likes me. How would you talk to that person? Right? You would probably tell them is that, you would ask them questions, you would assure them, you would encourage them. And if you really notice, okay, there is a pattern of micromanaging, you'd be like, okay, let's start afresh tomorrow and choose to be the manager you want to be with your people. See if you can, and again, even just noticing, for most of us, the way we talk to ourselves is very different from how we would talk to someone we deeply love. So just even recognizing that, and then again, not beating ourselves for that, because sometimes it's like we're beating ourselves for beating ourselves, right?
Absolutely.
And
I
again,
liked what you
choosing that
said.
love for yourself.
I liked what you said. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, about loving yourself and coming back to yourself. Like, just when you have, at least if you have a strong sense of your identity and who you are, you can always return to that. I feel like that's an important piece of what you're talking about. What's something that went wrong in your business, and how did you solve it? I mean, we have a lot of entrepreneurs who listen, and they're all women and they're trying to figure it out. Like, how did you crack the code on a recent obstacle?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if I would say I've cracked the code. I really think of myself as a work in progress. But given you have entrepreneurs listening to this, when I started my business, I had lots of different areas I wanted to focus on. There were lots of things I was passionate about. And I come from a business and marketing background, so I understood product market fit. You create something that the market wants. So I intellectually knew it, but it was really hard for me to just be like, I'm doing this for this audience, and this is the problem I'm solving. And it took a lot of, there were very conscious experiments that I ran. And I would say I learned so much from them. And again, kind of back to like, I couldn't have had the insight of what is my business all about by just sitting on the whiteboard, just sitting with sticky notes. And for me, I really had to go and put my work out there, share my story, share a pitch, share a offering, and really see how am I feeling? How is the market responding? And coming back to like, what is my longer term vision for myself, for my business, for my family, for my work in the world, my contribution in the world. And it took several iterations. I'm in the process of revamping my website because my current website looks very different from what I'm doing now and what I want my work to look like. So I would say, if I had to sort of distill all of that down, my perspective here would be, know that, there'll be certain decisions in your business where, yeah, you can sit on a whiteboard, you can sit with sticky notes, talk to a friend, talk to a mentor, and the answers become very clear. And that's wonderful. And then there are certain challenges where you go experiment. You go have a hypothesis, you run an experiment, you learn from it, and then you create, you iterate again. And that's not, I think sometimes, especially women, we can put a lot of pressure. As you said, social media, we see somebody's perfectly polished, I wouldn't say perfect, but beautifully polished website or a blog post or podcast, whatever. And it can be like, oh, they just have it figured out. I don't. We don't see the messiness underneath the hood. And
I see my desk right now.
And a lot of times it takes iterations, it takes experimentation.
Right.
And I want people to know, like, that's not a bug, like it's a feature of the process. Like it's how it's designed to be. And not to beat ourselves up for that.
Absolutely. So Neha, thank you so much for all of this wisdom. Where can we find you? Tell us about all of those good, yummy details.
So you can go to my website, which is my name.com. So it's nehamandhani.com. I write pretty regularly. I'm going to be starting a new program, which is really for managers and primarily in the corporate world, but nonprofit, academia, everything, on what does it mean to coach as a manager. So people are welcome to, subscribe to my newsletter and they can get more information there. In terms of social media, I'm very active on LinkedIn. So I write regularly on LinkedIn. I have a newsletter on LinkedIn as well. So people who are active on LinkedIn are welcome to check out my work there as well.
Awesome. Thank you for being on the Big Meow.
Thank you so much, Kristen, for having me.
Are you looking for authentic connections, business mentorship, and a supportive community? Join C.A.T.S Network. Thank you for listening to the Big Meow podcast. Please subscribe, give us a 5-star review, and share this episode with your community.